Well, first off, I'd like to thank Dr. Bain for actually being willing to go and watch playthroughs of video games and talk with me about video games. And I'd like to thank Dr. Hams for being the second reader, and generally everyone in the English department for not telling me no about video games. And I don't think anyone expected me to actually be allowed to do that. Born in August of 1890 in Providence, Rhode Island, Howard Phillips, better known as H.P. Lovecraft, is said by some to be integral to American horror and has been hailed as the father of modern horror as a whole. However, several controversial facets of Lovecraft's life have led to him being largely dismissed by critics and scholars and virtually unknown to those who do not read horror fiction. For example, Lovecraft believed in the biological inferiority of black men and women as opposed to white men and women. He held similar, though less extensive, views on other races as well, which is possibly what's fueled an attitude often cited as xenophobic. This, in conjunction with being an open atheist, are factors that may have contributed to the lack of interest in a serious study of his works. However, if we were to dismiss any writer with either racist or atheist beliefs, I lost the line. Wait, there you go. There you go. A large portion of the Western canon would not be studied. Rather, the fact that Lovecraft held such strong beliefs and yet is still appreciated as a writer in the modern world should be a point of interest and a lens through which to critically examine his work. This fear and hatred of others may have created a fuel for the nightmarish creatures and visions many associate with Lovecraftian stories. Unfortunately, what little Lovecraft scholarship there is limited in scope in that it focuses heavily on the types of creatures that fill his stories that many think form the basis of his writing, but that is incorrect. Instead, his writing and influence can be most easily seen by the philosophy contained within the writings. In order to fully appreciate the influence of Lovecraft, we must first understand both his philosophy of cosmic pessimism, also called cosmic indifferentism, and the influence of August Derleth, Lovecraft's first compiler, on that philosophy. Once an understanding of the difference between Lovecraft and Derleth is reached, Lovecraftian influence can then be traced through various media while still distinguishing what is and is not truly Lovecraftian. As a way of ordering my examination of Lovecraftian influence, I'll begin by defining the philosophy of cosmic pessimism, and then explain the controversial relationship with Derleth and examine Lovecraft's influence on video games, as I've cut an examination of literature and film for time. This method will serve to show how Lovecraft has evolved from being a niche interest for writers and avid readers into an easily accessible font of story material that average members of society would recognize. Lovecraft himself is usually referred to as being a mechanistic materialist, an essentially atheistic worldview based largely on scientific knowledge and advancement, and holding little concern for traditionally supernatural or paranormal beliefs. His stories are centered on a belief that we, humanity, are not nearly as important or powerful as we would like to believe. Instead, we are in a sense at the bottom of the cosmic totem pole. Specifically, Lovecraftian writing centers on the idea that human ideas of good, evil, soul, love, hate, right, and wrong, and essentially anything else humanity has thought of, is of little concern or importance to the cosmos at large. In a letter to James F. Morton, Lovecraft states, "I am an indifferentist. The cosmos doesn't give a damn one way or the other about the special wants and ultimate welfare of mosquitoes, rats, lice, dogs, men, horses, pterodactyls, trees, fungi, dodos, or other forms of biological energy." This self-identification from Lovecraft shows a core element of his personal philosophical viewpoint and has led many prominent Lovecraftian scholars to casually refer to his philosophy as cosmic indifferentism. It is at this point I will actually disagree with Lovecraftian scholars, both in the past and active today. Contrary to the title of cosmic indifferentism, I believe the title of cosmic pessimism is more appropriate. The title of cosmic indifferentism is appropriate when examining Lovecraft as a self-contained series of writing, as it directly explains the way that a collection of cosmic beings and the universe at large views humanity. However, I believe that cosmic pessimism embodies not only the beliefs of Lovecraft, but also acknowledges the literary world Lovecraft was born into and the literary world his stories continue to exist within. Literature focuses on what we as humans find important: the soul, emotions, justice, good, and evil. This sense of order that we impose on the universe is nearly constant within the literature that comes both before and after the time of Lovecraft's writings. While there were some stories and attempts at removal from this anthropocentric view, Lovecraft centered his writing on the idea that we are nothing in the cosmos at large. Since his philosophy is such a stark removal from anthropocentrism, using simply the title of cosmic indifferentism does not embody the full scope of what makes his writing so unique. Cosmic pessimism instead shows the admittedly bleak outlook of his view in the face of a literary world that disagreed with him. Humans who once thought that they were central to existence, the cherry on top of some god's cosmic sundae, are now shoved out of the limelight and discover that they barely even register as crumbs to the cosmos they exist within. This difference in focus is why I believe that cosmic pessimism is a more appropriate term. Now, while a simple description of Lovecraft's philosophy may suffice in some instances, it is important to gain a thorough understanding of what is and is not Lovecraftian in order to trace his influence through various media and genres. This task is made more difficult by the seemingly common misconception of what is and is not an idea created by Lovecraft himself. August Derleth is the man who collected much of Lovecraft's work and is one of the primary reasons we have such an extensive library of Lovecraft's writings. But he added his own ideas to what he dubbed the Cthulhu mythos, a term many scholars disagree with as being a misinterpretation, but one which I support as an easily recognized symbol of common aspects in Lovecraft's stories. And this has led to a general muddying of the literary water. Derleth gives us a broad connection to Lovecraft's writings through his preservation efforts, but eventually distorted the landscape via his own additions to the Cthulhu mythos. This shift away from true Lovecraftian philosophy came from the opposition of Derleth's Catholic beliefs to Lovecraft's atheist beliefs. When mentioning Derleth's view of the Cthulhu mythos, one writer claims, Derleth maintains that this is all a parallel of the Christian mythos, with its bad against good and with humanity at the focal point of it all. This anthropocentric view of a good versus evil is the main identifying difference between Lovecraftian and Derlethian influence. Derleth used this new focus to insert creatures to create an elemental alignment that Lovecraft himself never envisioned, as well as the battles between benevolent elder gods and evil old ones. While Lovecraft intended creatures like Cthulhu, Yog-Sothoth, and Nyarlathotep to be purely cosmic and foreign, Derleth turned them into water and earth elementals while inserting Cthugha, a fire elemental he claimed Lovecraft forgot to include. Derleth's shift, plus the addition of talismans that give man power over the cosmic beasts and some modicum of control over their destiny, creates a removal from the indifferent cosmos with powerless man that is so clearly seen through stories directly written by Lovecraft. Keeping Lovecraft and Derleth separate is needed in order to trace true Lovecraftian influence. Lovecraftian philosophy can easily be seen through his stories, and two of the best examples are The Call of Cthulhu and The Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath. I have cut an outlining of the specific themes seen within these stories for time, and I've also cut examinations of Lovecraftian novels and film to focus instead on the newest medium to show his influence, which is video games. Video games offer a new public exposure to Lovecraftian story elements and ideas. And many Lovecraftian games or missions within games were successful, a welcome change to the plethora of failed Lovecraftian film adaptations. In order to accommodate time, I'll just examine a few of them. Many games do focus on a more Derlethian influence, as the player wishes to in some way be effective or at least have actions that hold meaning. But many still work in the philosophy that marks Lovecraftian tales. Take, for example, Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem. Eternal Darkness is largely Derlethian, though it pulls heavily from a Lovecraftian influence. Throughout the game, the many characters the player controls are acting against a series of Lovecraftian-style beasts named Ulyaoth, Zelotath, and Chaturga, with Mantarok, the one in the corner there, being largely in the background. While these beasts are Lovecraftian in nature, the rest of the game is styled mostly like an average thriller, with the exception of a new innovation in games called the Sanity Meter. This meter, when depleted, causes a variety of effects on the game, including bleeding walls, the player entering a room on the ceiling, fake error screens, lowering the game volume, and deleting all of your save files. This sanity meter, besides the Lovecraftian atmosphere and a nod towards the Necronomicon in the form of the Tome of Eternal Darkness, is what cements this game as a Lovecraftian experience. Human mental frailty is often addressed in Lovecraft, and the sanity meter of Eternal Darkness allows a player to experience a breaking sanity. Eternal Darkness proves that Lovecraftian elements can be successful in a video game, though it is still a far cry from being completely Lovecraftian. While the accessible game just mentioned is a good nod to Lovecraft, even though marred by a Derlethian approach, there are games that have strong Lovecraftian themes with no attempt at Derlethian aspects. A good example of this is Sunless Sea. This game focuses more on the writing of the game than the accessibility, though in its case many gamers still find it easy to approach. For example, in a move away from a direct horror experience, Sunless Sea was based on an online text role-playing game named Fallen London, and plays with the form by creating a game where half of the player's time is spent in a top-down exploration of an underground ocean. This is broken with the various ports the player can dock and where the text-based plots can be followed. The Lovecraftian aspects here come from the vast array of underground denizens who hold more power and knowledge than the character, who is the captain of the ship, in almost every situation. The game actually gives the player methods of retaining benefit after the crew dies off completely, knowing it will happen multiple times. Human frailty and insanity is common in Sunless Sea, where the panic of the crew is a resource to be maintained, lest the crew goes completely mad and mutants. It is a game that comes very close to the philosophical basis of Lovecraftian writing, human insignificance in the face of creatures who know more than is possible for us to know, and hold more power than we could hope to have. Even the goals within the game hold no lasting impact on these creatures. Instead, the goals for the player are things like compiling stories or finding your father's bones. Through these goals and this method of gameplay, Sunless Sea proves to be a strong example of a truly Lovecraftian game. Now, in order for the work to stay alive, it needs to bridge genre and reach more than the niche audience that Lovecraft wrote to during his life. While games like Sunless Sea began making the strides of bridging genre, it is not enough. Lovecraftian influence has spread beyond the reaches of that game, and one example is a game created to make use of new virtual reality technology called Euclidean. Euclidean is a truly Lovecraftian game in most every sense. The player is an unnamed person and is left to slowly sink lower into an unknown area that is filled with dangerous creatures he knows nothing about. Along the way, a voice warns the player of the danger and reminds him that he is not supposed to be there, that what he is seeing is not meant for his eyes. In the end, the player finds that his efforts to survive are meaningless in the face of the great old ones who give him a gift that sends him into oblivion. A truly Lovecraftian look at the futility of human action in the face of overwhelmingly powerful creatures. It is a game which takes the bridging into other genres further by incorporating new technology. Euclidean is a good introduction into Lovecraftian philosophy for those unfamiliar, but there are two games that are the best examples of making Lovecraft accessible and showing just how far his influence has reached. Bethesda Game Studios is a wildly successful game studio, and two of their games hold missions that are strongly Lovecraftian. Those games are Fallout 3 and The Elder Scrolls V: Skyrim, though I will only discuss Skyrim. Two missions in Skyrim, the Path of Knowledge and the Gardener of Men in the Dragonborn DLC of Skyrim, shows Lovecraftian influence. During these missions, the player character, the Dragonborn, must find and use a black book of forbidden knowledge that has been used once before by the main antagonist of the DLC. This book transports the Dragonborn into the Apocrypha, the realm of a Daedric prince of knowledge and memory named Hermaeus Mora, who takes the form of a mass of tentacles with a single large eye. Even while performing tasks for Mora, the Dragonborn proves to be completely powerless against the being himself, despite fantastic abilities in magic. Mora holds enough power to make an attempt at combat impossible, and so a verbal interaction is performed instead. This shows Lovecraftian influence through not only the inclusion of knowledge not meant to be learned by mere mortals, but through the inclusion of Hermaeus Mora himself. Mora represents the cosmic beasts that are present in Lovecraftian tales, a cosmic power that cares little for humanity unless it is using us to its own whims through manipulation. This game shows the philosophy behind Lovecraft, and not simply the superficial use of creatures, by incorporating directly Lovecraftian ideas into a widely played role-playing game. Through these games, we can see how Lovecraftian influence is at work even outside of the horror genre, and indeed in a media that is widely accepted by those who are not fans of horror in the first place. Not only is it the widely popular media of video games, but it is couched within the RPG genre. Lovecraftian influence has come a long way, from being hidden in Pulp Fiction magazines to showing up in popular video games, not even in the horror genre. Lovecraft has shown that his writing is here to stay. The reason this eventual spread of influence is important is for the fact that Lovecraft himself was writing to a very specific audience, fans of weird fiction and of horror. Yet even a century later, we are seeing his work outside of his chosen genre. His philosophy, a unique and intriguing aspect of his work, is what has allowed his influence to remain so strongly in the collective consciousness of society. Understanding what aspects of his philosophy have made his influence spread allows writers in the modern world a window into how their work can be remembered for years to come.